The worst of the land had been planted in wood. The old folk saw to that. If it wasn't good enough to cultivate, then they planted it.
The beech trees only came in here in 1774, just before the rebellion. You see, that's why the beech hedge at Meiklour is so high. The soldiers were taken away and they couldn't. And these beeches and this beeches round the back here and these ones up here had been all planted at the same time, had been all at that time, you see. This was the fashionable tree. All the estates round about had beech trees. Well, that was the beginning of them.
Where did the oak come from?
Oh, just locally, I suppose, or any place we dealt with the wood merchants in Dundee, and and round about wherever they were taking down the wood, there was plenty of wood in these days. Local round about, all these big trees were ready for that, and they had to be cut and then they had to be left to dry for a while.
Well, in the mill itself, there would be a fireman, there would be 2 sawmillers, and each sawmiller would have an assistant, and that would be about the size of it for the mill. The rest of the men would be engaged in cutting the timber initially, of course. 2 men with a crosscut saw, and they treated their saws as a nurse would treat a child. They wouldn't let the wind blow on the saw. If they stopped at lunchtime, they would bind the saw up in oily bags and rags and that sort of thing. Keep it clean, keep it free of rust, and they would sharpen it to a great pitch of sharpness. They reckoned, of course, that was their livelihood. The saw was their livelihood. The speed at which a saw could go through a tree was the main thing. They were paid by the amount of timber they cut down. So, of course, they had to keep their saws at the pitch of efficiency. It was a hard life, wasn't very well paid, but they seemed to enjoy it. See, an awful lot of the timber was cut in the winter time. If it was hardwood they were cutting. The cutting of softwood went on all the year round. And the men that cut the timber, they were often self-employed. They'd be employed by the owner of the sawmill to cut timber on the hillside, and they were paid by so much a cubic foot of wood. They were slightly apart from the sawmill staff, they kept themselves maybe a wee bit apart, because I think they were the best paid men in the lot. The harder they worked, and the longer they worked. Sometimes they worked very long hours to make big money.
But lads, the cocks, they be crocodile, but leave ye. The burns may run sae banks to braes, for I am but a pluming laddie, and born to be